The years 2020 and 2021 are an eye-opener for the businesses globally. Things can change fast and only those who innovate can survive such difficult times. Innovation and technology play a major role in recovery, and those who do not wish to innovate with changing times perish. In the upcoming panel discussion, we'll hear from industry leaders sharing their point of view on imagining the possibilities, how innovation is driving the food, leisure, and entertainment industry. I would like to invite Sanjesh Thakur, partner, Deloitte India, to moderate this discussion. Welcome, Mr. Thakur.
Thanks for providing us this opportunity, and first of all, and a very warm welcome to all. This is going to be a very, very interesting panel discussion, but before we get busy with the proceedings, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Sanjesh Thakur, and I'm a partner in Deloitte's Consulting and Risk Advisory practice. I'll be your moderator for the session today. Like I mentioned, this is going to be a very interesting topic where we're going to talk about the innovation in the food, leisure, and entertainment space, which is a space which had its own share of impact over the last 18 months. But I think as we're coming out of the woods, this is going to be a very, very interesting space for us to watch and grow, and also see what impact innovation has on the business and operating model for most companies. To delve deeper into the subject, I have a very, very interesting panel for the topic today. I'll quickly introduce the panel. I have with me Nitin Saluja, who is the founder of Chayos, Sagar Daryani, founder Wow Momo, Arun Chittilapilli, managing director Wonderla Amusements, and Dhimant Bakshi, joint CEO Imagica Entertainment, PC Mustafa, co-founder and CEO ID Fresh Foods. So with that, I just wanted to open the stage for our discussion, and let me begin with you, Nitin. Which is a very interesting space. Like I said, I've had my morning cup of tea, which was similar to Meri Wali Chai, and I'll just get started with that. If you look at the disruptions that have happened in the business over the last 18 months, right? I think all consumer companies, all retailers have talked about consumer anxiety. Travel was restricted, stores were shut. And we know where the business was, so we don't even want to be talking about it. As we look ahead, how have you in the last 18 months gone about bringing in innovation in the business model to stay relevant to the consumer? Because like I said, all businesses were really struggling to keep afloat. Let me begin. So Nitin, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Sanjesh. Thank you guys for having me here. Sanjesh, it has actually been some of the most eventful 18 months anybody could have ever asked for. Having said that, I think these have been certainly those months where we've had to go back and reinvent ourselves. We did three key things that have helped us keep pace with what the consumer might be looking for, because at one point of time we were just trying to crystal gaze what will work possibly for the customer. Then once that becomes reality, you are just looking forward, you are looking ahead of it. So the first and foremost thing that we started to do, we were the first brand that started to publish the body temperature of their team members who were involved in making your order, and the whole thought process was to be able to give the customer the right degree of confidence. And all this was possible simply because we run our own technology team, and that technology team enabled us to dynamically just get this information be printed on a bill and be able to pass on the right degree of confidence to the customer. With that, we then moved on to just launching, for the safety of our customers, launching our dine-in mobile application, so that you walk into a Chayos store, you pull out the Chayos app, and instead of talking to our team, you end up placing your order on that mobile application. The third thing that has helped us stay ahead of the curve is our entire D2C sales. We've had products at Chayos for a very long period of time, but we never really thought of it to be a big enough opportunity. And then COVID surprised us tremendously, where we started to see consumers picking up our products left, right, and center. from Jaios.com, from all the other possible portals like Amazon, Big Basket, so on and so forth. So those three things: two riding primarily on technology, one riding on new product addition and new channel. That is what has helped us stay ahead. Our deliveries were always mainstay for our overall business. They continue to grow over the course of last 18 months, and they continue to grow as we talk as well.
Thank you, Nitin. Just moving on the same theme, Sagar, could you just talk us through some of the innovations that you brought in your business and operating model, especially during the pandemic?
So basically, thanks, Sandesh. Thanks to the entire ET team for having me here. Firstly, like I say, adverse times calls for being diverse. It calls for being resilient. And as a startup, you have to be agile. I think what we realized is that we had to go back to our basics. For us, the business came down to 1/10. Having started Wow Momo, which is 30,000, 12 years back, the business came down to 1/10, 3,000 plus employees. You had that pressure of paying salaries. You saw losses for the first time. So in 12 years of business, I had never seen a cash burn when it comes to operations, right? So it was scary. And especially, when you're locked up in a house, locked up in a room, you can't do much. So I think what I've realized is that what the pandemic has done is that for every category leader, they've found a way to revive, survive, and grow. I think we took up that challenge. We felt that, for us, if we have to get out of this, we have to definitely be resilient. We have to, if the customers can't come to you, how do you go to the customers? So for us, I think we've had a major pivot in the business. Prior to COVID, I think delivery was more of an omni-channel for us. And now we realize that, we have to be more of multi-channel. Prior to COVID, we would do 1.5 lakh online orders. Now we do almost close to 7.5, 8 lakh online orders. So the business has taken a major pivot. But I tell you what, the first thing that we did is that when the lockdown happened, we were able to deliver hot momos to people in like half an hour, 45 minutes. And when cash flows came down, we started this new business line called Wow Momo Essentials, because what was happening with Big Basket, with grofers, they were taking almost 24 to 48 hours to deliver essentials. At that point of time, we felt that if we can give garam momo de sakte hain, why can't we keep the machinery going, sweat the asset better? So we tied up with IDC, Procter & Gamble, HUL, and we started a new business line exactly in 29 days. Now that new business line was short-lived. It was there only for 3 months, but it made the team believe that, we can work, move, and be agile and survive. I think it got in required cash flows for the first 3 or 4 months to, enable us to pay salaries, etc. And as the business began to grow, we began to realize that, the businesses cannot be one-dimensional. It has to be multi-channel. Deliveries picking up. We have 2 brands, Wow Momo, Wow China. We were not really a cloud kitchen model. For me, cloud kitchen was always a dark kitchen, a ghost kitchen, because it never was giving profits. And, we've built the QSR business with profits. However, when I began to combine my Wow Momo, Wow China stores, get larger throughput sales, do cross-functioning of operations, I think these learnings made me believe that the future is more about convenience. The future is more about sharing having the share of the stomach. And how do you build a platform play where if customers can't come to you, you reach to them? Because when things will get back to normal, right? What the pandemic has done, it has made food delivery more of a habit, which if we had to do as a business, we would have had to go through a lot of burn and, create that trend. The pandemic has made that happen very naturally. And when that happens naturally, you have an equal mix of customers coming to you and you going to the customers. So for me, the future looks like a 50-50 ratio. So like I said, it's going to be more about multi-channel, multi-brand, owning that share of the stomach. And by multi-brand, I just don't mean having a product as a brand. I mean creating that brand in that space, having different brand visible in the online application. You can have one central kitchen, but have 2 brands operating from that kitchen. So better utilization of space, of asset, of manpower. How do you get more profitability? Another thing that we did is that, we felt with Wow Momo, we made it the food of all times. Now, how do you make that food of all times with you all the time? So earlier it used to be about a working lunch. Now we said that, it's going to be more about maybe working snacks between your Zoom calls. People are at home, they would not want to wait for half an hour for meals to come in. So we came up with an FMCG line called Wow Momo Essentials. So frozen packed momos, the idea developed in the pandemic. We already had the idea with us, but we started working on it in the pandemic. I think sometime in June, we got going with the R&D, and by this year in June, we launched the product. So I think it led us to a new business line altogether, a new vertical of FMCG, which I now feel is going to take us a long, long way. So I think the pandemic has just opened up more doors. It's given us a pause and made us believe that there is so much more we could have done and we can do. So it's been good for business, to be honest.
So Sagar, on the lighter side, and generally what I track in the corporate sector chatters is, you started off with steam to fried to pan fried, right? And and of course, you're now venturing into the FMCG space. Is it fair to say that you betting big on the ready-to-eat segment? What innovations are you adopting there? If you want to duck that question, if it's confidential, that's fine. But I just thought I'll get.
No, I'll take it up. So for me, Sanjesh, food tech has always been about using technology in providing the food in the right manner. Like, people make good food, we believe we make food good. Now, how can we use technology to make that food good and have it delivered to you at your doorstep with the right price, with the right quality is what we are working on. Yes, ready to eat is going to be a big segment for us going forward. We're being slow and steady with FMCG at the moment. I think we will start doing carpet bombing sometime mid of next year. We have a plan in place. We have new product launches in place. Like they say, it takes time to build a foundation. So we're setting up another plant in Delhi NCR. That'll take time to come in. But yeah, you will see a lot of evolving in the food space going forward. We fairly believe that we want to be that one food conglomerate coming out of India where we are able to be an Indian brand that goes global. I get inspired by brands like Domino's, KFC coming to India, and look at what Haldiram's has done. And if we could even be a small portion of what Haldiram's is, it's an aspirational story, it's an aspirational brand, and I'm proud that I'm actually aspiring to be more like an Indian brand and go places.
That's good to hear, and we've got quite a bit to cover as far as the entertainment and amusement sector is concerned. But before that, let me come to you, PC, and if you can tell us how the whole space, which is you have a very interesting space. I mean, I'm a big fan of idlis and some of the South Indian breakfasts. I just wanted to understand, how did you go about reinventing yourself, or what were some of the innovative ideas that you adopted during the pandemic? Because like I said, it was a very unusual time. So talk us through some of the innovative practices that you adopted in your operating model.
Thanks, Sanjesh. Can you hear me?
I can.
In the name of God, peace be unto all of you. Great to be here with people like Sagar, Nitin, Arun, and Hemant. If you look at any business, right, the most innovative ideas came during the crisis period.
Yeah.
If you look at the history as well. So when this pandemic hit us, we looked at maybe 5 aspects of innovation. I'll probably quickly take you through those 5 aspects of innovation in the next 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
One, we looked at the product innovation itself. So we ended up launching a clean label bread, which was not available in the market in the FMCG. Fresh bread, clean label. So that's one such product that we came up during the pandemic time. We looked at the packaging innovation. We brought in, great packaging innovation, like the filter coffee decoction that you see in the market, right?
Yeah.
During the pandemic time. We did look at the technology innovation. When we say technology innovation, we were an offline business. We were manufacturing our products and supplying to offline stores. And during the pandemic time, stores were closed. And customers were not able to identify the list of stores or what the product was available. So we had this complete data with us, this distribution data with us. So we were the first company to come up with this concept called Store Finder, wherein customers could come to a website, check for the neighborhood stores where ID products are available. And we provide them the last supply date, quantity of supply, as well as the next supply date. So that much granularity information was given to customers, so that it became very useful for them, and that was one of the best things that we did during the pandemic time. And the fourth one was about the marketing innovation. So during the pandemic time, we came with this very beautiful concept.
If I may just come in here, could you tell us, what was the benefit that you added by having that store founder? Because I know during lockdown,
customers during the pandemic time, stores were closed. Many stores, there were stock out issues, right? Or fresh stocks are not available. So for those, during those period, we provided this information to the customers in that this product is available in this list of stores, and this is the phone number, this is the location. They either walk into this store, and this is the kind of quantity available in the store. So we made the data available online to customers from our ERP system.
Okay.
That was a great benefit for a customer. Coming to the next point is about the marketing innovation. During the pandemic time, we came with this beautiful concept called the Trust Shop, wherein we set up unmanned shops in 600 apartment complexes.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Tell us more about it, because we heard that you had Visi coolers installed in some of the residential complexes, right?
Yeah. So during the pandemic time, within a span of 1 month, we came with a very, very innovative concept called Trust Shop. In Mumbai, we set up 600 plus trust shops, which was unmanned shop, right? There was no camera, there was no technology, it was not a vending machine. Customers were expected to come down, pick up their favorite product, drop the money in the money box kept next to it, or transfer to our account. There was no one watching except the Almighty God. The shop was based on trust. It got us a great brand mileage. It got us a great revenue. It was giving us a better revenue per store than a retail store. And customers were paying on MRP. So thereby, we ended up making better profit per store than a retail store. So we came with such a beautiful marketing campaign during this period. And probably the most important thing, we learned to do business model innovation as well. We learned to do more with less. There were a lot of unnecessary things in the business. We learned to do more with less with a very innovative concept. So I would say these are the 5 aspects we looked at innovation during the pandemic time.
Yeah, so wonderful. I think we've covered a lot of food. Moving on to some of our other panelists. So Arun, if I may come to you, if you could just talk us through what has been some of the key drivers of change over the last 18 months, and more importantly, from what I read and what I see, amusement parks, theme parks all over the world, of course, are looking at 7 to 8% growth. They're also looking at diversification. Could you talk us through what are some of the innovative practices you adopted, because everything was closed? How did you really manage the last 18 months?
So first of all, thanks for having me on the show with all of you esteemed panelists. Nice to see you. So I've not met most of you, but happy to see you online virtually like this. It's starting from how we are having this webinar. I think the whole way we do business and leisure has completely changed during the pandemic, right? I mean, I could have not imagined doing a Zoom call like this for a panel discussion before the pandemic. So that has completely changed the way we interact and we live and we enjoy things. So for a brick and mortar business like an amusement park, then I'm talking about this all over the world. It was a huge shock to, we've never really had to close any of our parks before the pandemic. The only few days that we ever closed our parks was during a Bandh, or once I think when Rajkumar died in Bangalore, that we were closed for a week and we all thought it was a big deal. Yeah. And then here we are suddenly, we are closed for weeks and months together. And so I think our first challenge was to figure out how do we reduce costs, because we had a monthly, cost rate of roughly about 14 crores and 0 revenue. So how do we bring that down? So I think that was our first challenge to, trying to bring that down. And I think we've been very successful in that. We've been able to bring that down from about 14 CR a month to about 3.5 crores a month. Everyone, I'm very happy to say that all my employees supported us. Everyone took a voluntary salary cut from the very top all the way to the bottom. Of course, we protected some minimum some minimum salary so that people lower down could survive. So that was our first thing that we did. The second thing that we had to do is try and stay in touch with our customers, right? And we knew that at least initially people were not so bothered about entertainment. I think people were in a state of shock. And everybody was expecting the worst. We didn't know how bad COVID would be. So at that time, I think the messaging that we did mostly was to say that good times will be back and that kind of stuff, which I think a lot of brands did. But while doing that, we also realized that we need to go completely digital, which is something that Wonderla has never done as a company. We've always relied on a mix of traditional plus digital marketing. But I think after COVID, especially during COVID, we have completely switched over to a digital first strategy. So our first strategy, obviously our first, call was to try and get in touch with people who who were our customers or who could be our customers, and start a dialogue with them. And digital is the best place to do that. And we wanted people to talk about us at any if there was any reason for people to talk about us, we wanted that to happen. So one of the things that we did during the pandemic, during the first lockdown, was we have a huge F&B team, roughly about 100 staff per park, and our head chef there came up with the idea, said, "We let's do a small cloud kitchen kind of a concept, wherein we run some some fun foods, and we just we do some fun stuff, and then at least that way we can be in touch with some people, at least, because those days, I think, like many of you others said here, the online food delivery business was booming at that time. Even I was using a lot of online deliveries during the even now I continue to do that. So I think one of the areas that we also wanted to try and explore or experiment was to do a small cloud kitchen.
Yeah.
We ended up doing about 5 cloud kitchens, 2 in Bangalore, 2 in Hyderabad, 1 in Hyderabad and 2 in Cochin. And we were doing some fun foods like a vada, which will shape all different takes on South Indian food, but with a twist. Biryani, which looked like, came in a pot or in a banana leaf. Everything it was all presentation, and it was done in a slightly quirky way. And the whole thing was done by my my F&B team. And I think more than anything else, I mean, we were not looking at it as a huge business opportunity, but what it really did was, I think it gave a lot of confidence to our people, because otherwise they were all sitting at home for months together with nothing to do, attending virtual meetings and preparing for when we will reopen, and getting everything ready, and working on the cost reduction. But there was no excitement for our staff, and I think something like this really brought that. And then once we reopened, I think it was around November last year, one of the things that we did was we invited a lot of COVID warriors in our host cities to come and experience our parks.
Sure.
That helped, because I think even for the staff, they were like, if we open the parks, are people going to come back? Who's going to come? People are scared to go out. So one of the things that we felt was, the role of COVID warriors at that time, at least, was I thought it was like a thankless job almost. So this is our way of giving back to people. So we almost had about 6,000 COVID warriors per location come and visit our parks with their families and kids, stuff like that. So we did those kind of things to stay in touch and make sure that whenever we reopened, we would have some top of the mind recall. Also, we did some funky campaigns, like when Kamala Harris was elected as the vice president. That was a huge news item. So we did a contest saying anybody who has the name Kamala will be given a park entry free on a particular day, and that got us more than the number of visitors. I think it just created a lot of international attention. We even got calls from BBC and CNN about that offer, because they found it funny, right? So so we were doing stuff like that to just and we are a cheeky, fun brand, so that's what we did.
Thank you, Arun. So moving on, Hemant, coming over to you. Just your quick comments on innovative practices that you adopted before we move on quickly to the next round.
Yeah, so for us, it was we were a single location format, physical, like Arun rightly said. For us, we were already going through a debt resolution process, so we were under stress in the business, and for that, it's the best time to regroup ourselves, focus on some of the essential activities. We restructured our organization, made sure that we were far leaner in every way. Further to that, we looked at essential aspect of really rough times, but how do we keep get activities wherein which we build edutainment as well as entertainment related activities which you could do it at home. So everybody spoke of work from home and so on and so forth. We said, why don't we do entertainment at home? And we built an entire proposition wherein which people could relive their memories at Imagica or any other amusement or entertainment parks that they have visited all over the world. They were our chefs who built excellent recipes, and we taught people how to cook at home, because that's the time, apart from going for e-commerce engagements and activities, many people tried cooking at home and wanted to experience something different.
Yeah.
So we built various such activities, a series of activities, and we even got character illustrator of our own and helped children build character content. So essentially what we tried to do was to stay engaged with customers.
All right. So I think, we had some good perspective. I just wanted to pick up another theme, which is very close to my heart personally. And this is very, very important for leaders, such as all of you on the panel today. I personally believe that as leaders, the way we operate, the way we think, the way we run the organization has a huge impact on the overall culture of innovation, right? In the sense, how do we really encourage the culture of risk-taking? How do we deal with failure? So each one of you as leaders have a huge role to play in really driving that culture. Let me come to you, Nitin, that, in your setup, I don't know if ChaiMonk was an employee innovation or, where did that come from, but very keen to get your views that how do you really, go about creating this culture of innovation? Because the fact of the matter is, whether we may like it or not, we all have a day job. Every employee who comes in, he or she wants to get the job done. And for most part, or for most of those brains, innovation becomes a residual effort. In middle of all this approach, how do you really drive innovation? Because we've got metrics to drive that investors and everybody else looks at. And we've got innovation that helps us sort of spearhead our business ahead. Nitin.
You've touched a topic that's very dear to my heart. I think innovation is what at Chaios we strive for with every passing day, with every passing month. And more often than not, what I have witnessed, that just necessity or the desire to be able to do something better.
Yeah.
Either something is broken and the desire to fix it leads to innovation, or something that's working well, just your own desire to make it better leads to innovation. You mentioned about ChaiMonks. ChaiMonks, they were a pure play outcome of us trying to make sure that we made a big, bold promise to our consumers that we will personalize every cup of chai fresh from ingredients. You can choose from 80,000 different combinations of chais and get them freshly done under 3 minutes at Chaios. It was just an outcome of our desire to be able to give to a customer 100% consistent cup of chai. So our regular customers are high frequency customers. They would come into a Chaio store, they would enter their phone number, and we could understand what their frequencies are like. Just to make their life that much more easier and seamless at a Chaios, we introduced facial recognition so that you don't have to enter your phone number every single time you walk into a Chaios. The sole purpose of that facial recognition tool is you come in and you save entering OTPs, you save entering what your usual chai was, and all those transactions, that entire span of 2 minutes that's cut short by a minute and a half, and it's just a 30-minute transaction, then that can be conducted. So innovation is something that comes out of either a problem to be solved or just trying to make something better, which might already be good. I personally believe that when you put your team into a constrained, let's say, framework where not every resource is available to them, they innovate, and they innovate like no other times. So that's how we keep on driving it, and we believe that innovation needs to be and innovation should be decentralized. It can come from a warehouse supervisor to a store manager, from a area manager to somebody in the HQ, and that's the only way you truly become an innovative company, or a company that thrives on new innovation. That's what we do. That's what we'll continue to do.
Very well put, Nitin. Thank you for that. Sagar, your quick comments on how you go about driving innovation, because the reason I want to spend time is this is often talked about, very seldom practiced, very difficult to do, because business in India and all of us are very busy chasing our matrix. Please talk us through how you go about creating the mindset of innovation, or even the mindset of saying failure is okay. You've learned something today.
Yeah, I think as a leader, you need to transmit your passion into your team. I mean that's the biggest challenge that I think we've faced over time. When you start your business, it's completely micromanaged, and as you grow, it is somewhere between micro and macro. You cannot be in a position of macromanaging, at least at our stage. When we are startups and we are building an organization, I firmly believe that you cannot be completely organized and build an organization. It has a journey. You make mistakes, you do trial and error, and for I think for first generation entrepreneurs like us, we've always welcomed trial and error. So failure in a way has always been that stepping stone to success. So I think that is something which we've never, has never bothered us. Because I think you hear about all the successes, but there are many failures behind it that lead to those successes. But as a team, as an organization, I think we've always believed that innovation has been our core. It's been one of our biggest strengths. See, we converted a simple steam momo to a chocolate momo, to a momo burger, to a baked momo or gratin, right? I mean, today, I had to wow the customer. I had to bring him back again and again. I mean, even if you look at stores, it's bright yellow in color, the bright yellow signage, the t-shirt that the staff wears, the way the staff talks, the way the staff smiles. I think we had to make our team believe the reality. We were not a brand from the US that, we would open a QSR store and have a 4-kilometer line on the day one. We had to, roll eyeballs. We had to make people come into our store. We had to convert a roadside snack into a brand. We had to give it a look and feel, a color. So I think there was innovation in everything. The way we hire, the way we recruit, the way we train our staff. Because today, I think we were one of the first 8 years back. We started video learning and video training. My role model brands would that time have training modules where you would have to read. But I think 8 years back, we came up with this idea of having videos to learn when it was only YouTube and there was nothing else. Video and AVs were not very the in thing then for learning. So I think you have to innovate in every sphere to make it life easier for yourself, for your consumers, and for your other stakeholders, whether it's investors, whether it is your suppliers, your vendors. Because ultimately, see, when you build a big brand or a big company, even your vendors in a way become your consumers. So we have this very friendly, a very vendor-friendly app that we've now developed, because what happens is that, there are days when you have minor delays on payments. There are days when you have, and I'm being very practical about it, right? There are days when you will have unavailability of stock. Now, rather than, the vendor coming and telling you, or you going and telling the vendor, it's just automated in the app. So it's a dashboard where you exactly know what is happening without you physically being involved, because the transactions are monitored accordingly. The indent is done accordingly, the orders, the POs are raised accordingly, and if a vendor is happy or upset, you get to know there is rating matrix. So at the time when Uber and Ola were rating customers and customers rating them, we were rating vendors and vendors rating us, because ultimately you have to build that holistic organization where everyone is taken care of. So I think we've always used innovation in a very different way to make life easy for us, whether it's selling the product, whether it's marketing, whether it's advertising. Today people talk about us participating in IPL, ISL. I have never spent money on putting in a logo, but I've always ensured that my Wow Momo stalls are there, because I'm making money by selling momos in those events. So I think and I'm branding myself in a very subtle manner. So I think innovation has been that core to us doing events, to us promoting. I think for us, opening more and more stores, being more and more visible was the way of going about things. We did not want to come up with press ads, hoardings, etc. to build that brand. I think we've become a household name with being a lot involved with the consumers. So, even if it's an event, for example, if it's an occasion like a Diwali, or if it's an occasion like a Durga Puja, how do we innovate and do events with consumers? So, for example, this year in Durga Puja, we did something very innovative. People do puja awards. If you know about Durga Puja in Calcutta, it's very big, right? So people do awards about the best looking puja, the best lighted puja. We did an award about around food, the best bhog. I mean the most innovative bhog, not even the best bhog, because every bhog is best. So yeah. I think it drew a lot of eyeballs. कि किसी ने आपके प्रसाद को लेके एक innovation करके आपको reward किया. So that's how you go about it.
Which is going to be very interesting, Sagar. I'm sure you've given some of our marketing colleagues, all our listeners, one or two tips around how to generate more ROI on the marketing money that they spend, but very, very useful and insightful. PC Mustafa, if I come to you, if you could just talk about how you go about building the culture of innovation in your setup.
So I think the role of a businessman or a businesswoman is to look around, identify customer problems and solve it for the customers. And I think that's what we're good at. Innovation doesn't start from the top. I think it has to be the culture of the organization itself. So at ID, everybody has the opportunity to innovate, come up with new ideas, and we have a platform in place to capture these innovative ideas, and then we get rewarded as well accordingly. If you look at idli dosa batter that we make, right, there is no rocket science in making idli dosa batter.
Yeah.
With 1 lakh rupees investment, anybody could go and start idli dosa batter business with 1 grinder, 1 mixer, 1 sealing machine and a weighing scale. There was no rocket science, there was no entry barrier. So otherwise, it was extremely important for us to look at different aspects of innovation and put in a very concentrated effort to innovate and continuously upgrade a business. So for example, we looked at the packaging innovation as something which people usually don't look at, right? Packaging is being considered as a medium of transporting products from place A to place B. But we looked at packaging as a different ways of, different way to innovate. For example, in the case of ID, we of course use packaging to transport products from factory to the stores and to the homes. But then we use packaging for something else as well. For example, we use very cocky language, to communicate to the customers in their, way of communication. Yeah. Second, we use packaging to keep the product fresh without adding anything else in the product. Our products are 100% natural, no chemicals, no preservatives, nothing artificial in it. But we use packaging, innovative packaging ways to maintain the freshness of the product. Most importantly, we use packaging to give that memorable user experience for a customer. For example, if you look at the vada batter that we created, vada packaging that we created, which was one of the viral video 2 years ago, vada making was an art. There was no science in it. We brought science into it to make perfect shaped vada by squeezing the vada batter.
So just on that point,
that kind of innovation could come in. Yeah.
Just a related.
Yeah. So I was coming to that, right? So we looked at different ways or different aspects of innovation, and then put in a very constant effort to get innovative ideas along all these lines. Whether it's product, for example, the one that we just launched, which is the clean label bread that we launched just 1 month ago in Bangalore market. It was an idea that came from the team.
Right.
The paratha business that we came up was an idea that came from one of the team members. So I think the message here is, if you have an innovation team that is limited to three, four members in an organization, but if the entire organization has to innovate, you need to bring that culture into the organization.
So PC, that's very well put. Like you said.
Very well said.
So you were saying that. Sorry, somebody wanted to make a point?
No, I was just agreeing with that completely. So true.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You talked about sustainable packaging, right? And that came out through one of the innovation ideas, not through an innovation cell, but employees at large. How do you balance innovation and cost? Because, it's great to talk about sustainability, but, and I think that's the trend of the future. But yeah. Could you share your experience of how sustainable packaging impact the EBITDA and the P&L? And how did you really manage that, right? Because managing finance...
I haven't solved that yet. We are working on it. We haven't solved that yet. Okay. And that's a fact. But we will solve it one day, for sure. Right? That's our determination. Now, for any innovative ideas to work, right, it has to probably meet 3-4 criteria. One, it has to be feasible, technically feasible. Right? It has to be available. Solution has to be available locally, right? If you have to depend on an external party, it's not going to be that easy. And most importantly, it has to be commercially viable. And this is where most of the innovative things fail. And that's a challenge that we are facing with the innovative packaging, the sustainable packaging. So one such idea that we are now trying to experiment is a reusable packaging, because batter is being product which is being consumed on a daily basis. Is there a way that we can probably look at a milk bottle kind of packaging, right? So that we can bring in some kind of sustainability into the business.
Yeah.
Of course, it requires a supply chain, the whole thing, but we are studying about it.
Sure. So moving on, Arun.
So before you go to Arun, I have one point. Arun,
Yes.
happened to visit the Wonderla Resort very recently, in fact, this month.
Oh, nice.
Great job.
Oh, thank
It
you.
was a great experience. We spent, 3 days out there. In fact, I did send a pic to your dad.
Yes. Happy to say that we are also big customers of you. We buy your paratha, the mix, the
Yeah,
pre
thank you.
ones. It's excellent, amazing stuff. Sorry, go back.
No, I was just saying, Arun, how do you in your company go about creating the culture of innovation?
Entertainment by its very nature is a fast changing, fast evolving area, right? I mean, if you think of what we did as kids for entertainment and what our kids are doing today for entertainment, it's a night and day difference, right? So I think that's always been a constant challenge for Wonderla to be, so what I and my dad always says, look at everything from a customer's angle. How can we make sure that his or her journey through our parks and our the food and everything be as seamless and as painless as possible, with as minimum chance of error and things like that, complaints. So that has always been our focus. So I think a few examples. One is we are probably the only amusement park company to have heated water in our pools, which is absurd when we thought about it. We came up with this idea in 2004 when we opened in Bangalore. We knew that after October onwards till Jan, it's cold in Bangalore. So who's going to get into a water park? So we said, well, let's heat the water, and we already had our electrical company. They supplied water heaters, and we use solar heating for our water. So stuff like that. It's something that we've always tried to do. So one, like I said, is heating, and RO treated water. So water and hygiene has always been it's a contentious issue when it comes to water parks and amusement parks, and especially in a country like India, right? How do you make sure that the water in your parks are clean? How does it appear clean? One is the actual cleanliness of the water, and perceived cleanliness also. When you look at the water, you know whether it's dirty or clean. So how do you do that? So then, we did a lot of work on that, and my engineering team, they decided that we have to use RO water at some level. So which is expensive. Using RO water for drinking is one thing, but using RO water for pools is an entirely different matter. So how can we do that in a way which is the least harmful also, because we don't want any rejects, and we also take a lot of pride in being as sustainable as we can. We use solar heating wherever we can. We reuse all our water. We don't use bore wells and things like that. We use rainwater harvesting wherever we can. So stuff like that. So that's something that has always been part of our DNA. And we are probably also one of the few amusement park companies which make our own rides. We have a few patents for our some of the rides that we've made, attractions that we made. So stuff like that. So that way, I think something that we've been able to brew some innovation among our staff. And so a lot of these things have not come from the management team. It has come from executive level or workman level, people, and it's worked. So now some of the things that we are innovating on is, like I said, one of the biggest pain points for customers in an amusement park is always standing in a queue, right? I mean, I'm sure most of you have been to amusement parks, and you know that if you go to any big park, you spend a lot of time in queue. So how do you try and reduce that? Because it's not really especially when you go with a family with kids and things like that, you want to reduce that. So we are working on something where we use RFID tech and some NFC to kind of see how we can reduce queue times. It's still in a prototype stage. Currently, we use RFID for lockers and payments. But how do we use that to also do remote queues and things? So that's something that we've been working on for the last couple of years. I think we might have a breakthrough in the next year or so. New website. something that we are doing with CRM and ORM in mind. So we have completely revamped our website in such a way that we know who the who's coming to us and how do we cater to his or her needs in a much better way. So that's something that we really want to do. Reducing queue times is top.
Sorry to jump in here, but I wanted to pick on a very important point that you talked about on the water, in the amusement parks. I live in NCR. I live in Gurgaon, and I love swimming, but given the quality of water in most of the swimming pools, I think most of us refrain from it, right? So
right.
I just wanted to combine on our topic today of innovation. Generally, companies that use water have sustainability big on their agenda, right? And I think the future consumers, 10 years, 5 years down the line, will definitely focus on that. Do you see this as a potential area for innovation? Because you use a lot of water. Nobody's talked about clean water in amusement parks. Nobody's talked much about sustainability, along that lines. Do you see you sort of innovating in that space? Your quick comments before I move to Dhimant.
Definitely, I think water is going to be scarce, right? And it's going. The pressure on population to use less water is much higher today than it was ever before.
Yeah.
So definitely we have to try and save as every drop of water that we can and try and recycle it as many times as we can. Like I heard that in Singapore, they recycle all their water without exception, right? Even the sewage water is recycled to a huge degree that it becomes drinking again. So that's the level of technology that's available now when it comes to water. Yes, it's not cheap, it's expensive, but I think there are innovative ways in which you can,
sure,
jugaad that we do in India, right? How we, there are ways in which we can do this without going to a German supplier, or we can actually make a lot of these things in India, and that is something that we try and do a lot. Like I said, it's still a work in progress, and it's also a moving goalpost, right? This year, if we save 85% water, next year we want to save that 90%, because that 5% also is a big number, right? So I think that it's always going to be a moving yardstick. I don't know whether we'll reach perfection, but I think it's important to try. That's what I would say.
Sure. So Dhimant, your quick comments. I hope you can hear us. Your line is...
Yes, it's much better now.
Yeah.
So for us, we've also invested significantly in the water treatment and other plants to make sure that we are as sustainable as we can. There is a lot of work, of course, that we need to do. There are many areas which we know are open areas for us to work on. For innovation, we've built something in-house which we call as the Innovation Council. And the beauty of this is not that it is led by any of the senior people, but it is led by our ground staff, and they come and present every month something what they see very unique or what they want to change upon. So one such thing that really happened during this pandemic is we made most of our software in-house. So we really worked on our process systems to see that how customer experience could become seamless, how we better catch and capture data, how do we target better, how do we improve systems. So we also implemented something called as virtual queuing system, where our guests do not have to wait in the queues, like Arun was rightly mentioning. This is one of the pain points. And keeping in mind the social distancing aspect, people would know when to go. So really, you don't have to worry about COVID or any other risk factors which we live under. Similarly, we also implemented contactless ordering in food. So we sell packages online wherein which customers would know what to order. At the same time, when they reach the dispensing locations, they can order it much faster. So many such initiatives we kind of implemented, apart from making retail products. So when we start, we are only theme park, amusement park category which has retail merchandise in a significant manner. And when we began, sometimes in 2012 to 15, we were almost 85% China and Far East sourcing. I'm very glad to say that today the ratio is almost reversed. We are almost 65% local. And over this 7 years journey, we made sure that the products were brought from China and other places like Vietnam and all. And we got them modeled here properly, and completely we have a focus to at least move to 90-95% sourcing as made in India. So in our products, the lead times are much higher, as you would know. So it kind of takes a while. Yeah.
Wonderful. So I think we've talked about innovation in respective companies. I just wanted to again use the last 15 minutes that we have to cover two important aspects. So requesting all of you to maybe just keep your answers brief so that we get the maximum out of the session. This is not a rapid fire, but yes, we would like to get your views on how technology is really driving the innovation, right? And when we look at technology, my favorite example is if you look at the television companies, I think they no longer call themselves consumer, they call themselves technology company. If you see the world's most, the largest companies, everything around tech entertainment is actually TMT and not consumer. So as a retail consumer professional, I'm not happy about it, but I think most consumer companies are calling themselves tech companies. The automobile companies are also calling themselves tech companies. So we couldn't not touch upon technology. And when you look at technology in innovation, some companies use that as an enabler. Companies like Apple is keeping technology right in the center, right? So I just wanted to get your views that how are you leveraging technology? Are you using it as an enabler, or are you saying that no, technology will be right in the center? I'm going to use technology, as a very central theme, and I will then innovate my product portfolio or my service portfolio. So let me open it up with Nitin. I'll come back to you again. I'll follow that sequence. Your take on how you leveraging technology. Are you innovating around technology, or are you keeping it in the center and then sort of rethinking your portfolio?
Sanjesh, I'll begin by saying that we are a chai company. If we get the chai right, we have done a job well. Yeah. So giving that right cup of chai in the hands of our consumer is the most important thing that we can ever try to do. Yes, we achieved that end goal using a lot of technology, using a lot of innovative processes. Does that make the core of what we are and what we do? My answer would always be that my core is always going to be able to give a perfect cup of chai in the hands of our consumers. And we proudly say that we are possibly one of the most technologically advanced food and beverage player globally. I say globally very cautiously, but I say this with very high degree of confidence. We've invested in building out different technology modules right from the point where, let's say, our chai pattis or sugar, they enter our warehouses all the way till that cup gets to our customers' hands or to the customer's home. There is a hell lot of automation and technology that's out there, but all that for me is a core enabler, and my core being to be able to give you a great cup of chai. You walk into a chayo store to relax. You don't walk into a chayo store because yaar yahan pe na technology se na bahut badhiya chai milti hai. So nobody ever has said that. Nobody will ever say that. Nobody should say that. They should say, I want to walk into a chai store because that's a place I want to be. That's my place to relax. As long as that core is being achieved, everything else continues to be an enabler, and we'll continue to double down on those enablers to strengthen the core.
That's very well put, Nitin. So, I like what you said. At the center is not technology. At the center of all you do that, you are a chai company. You may have, different facets of technology. You may have loyalty program, which may, tell me what's my favorite cup of chai. But at the end of the day, we are a chai company. We want to sell that experience. Everything else is incidental. Like the way you put it, Sagar, your quick comments.
Completely agree with Nitin. I think technology is an enabler. It cannot be the core of your business, according to me. That is my opinion. Personally, I think your core is your vision, your aspiration. In Nitin's case, it's chai. In my case, it's momos and Chinese and more things coming forward. I think technology just makes it more easier for you to provide that best quality service and product to your consumer. Like in our case, we are now creating a tech which actually examines every weight and every size and shape of a momo, so that we can maintain uniformity in a particular manner. And these are handmade skilled momos, right? So how do you get that right tech there to ensure the customer gets more consistency? Like, for example, we use technology without preservatives, without MSG, to create that same quality of momo and frozen. Now working on ambient. So I think technology for me has been more about using equipments, robotics in manufacturing, in making it more easier for your end employees, for your team, and for the consumer, and getting a better product. And I stick to it. I mean, for me, it's always going to be a wow enabler. It's going to be something that's going to make life easier as a promoter, as a founder. And that's what you're here for. I think now with so much of things available, as entrepreneurs, it's very, very important for us to choose what to adapt and not to what to adapt, because you cannot do everything at the right time. That's a very strong point that I have learned and realized.
DC, coming to you, how do you see technology in the center or around what you're doing?
One of the most difficult things for any packaged food in India is customers don't trust a packaged food. Anything in a packaged form is considered as unhealthy by Indians. And that's a fact, we all are facing. Sagar, you would know that, right? We don't add anything else in the product. We keep it 100% natural, but customers still don't trust it. One of the most important reason to believe for a consumer is the freshness of the product. Fresh sells. Fresh is the future. Now, for a fresh food business, technology is extremely important. So we captured last 15 years of store-wise, item-wise sales and wasted data. We now use this data to predict the right demand for the right store on the right day, every day. And we get it right. And technology plays an extremely important role. So ID runs on IT.
Thank you. Quickly, Arun, coming over to you, your quick thoughts.
Yeah, so I think like Nitin and the others said, I think for us, we always keep a customer in the middle, because what Wonderla is promising is a very memorable day out for you and your friends and your family, right? It's a day where you laugh, you scream, you run, you go upside down. It's a bit of a sensory overload going to an amusement park, and it's not something that you do every day. Now, so everything that we do, at least everything that I think my team does, is trying to understand how the journey of that customer is, from before he comes into the park to how he is entering the park, how he's using the facilities, how happy or unhappy was he, and how do we capture all this, right? So that's why I talked about RFID and things like that. And so technology has to be an enabler, and yes, it is becoming more and more important because people are getting more and more impatient, right? I think before people would have been happy to wait for 1 hour in an airport queue. Now 1 hour in an airport queue for check-in is just unacceptable, right? So same with an amusement park. Nobody wants to spend time in the queues. So how do we? So for us, technology is all about reducing pain points for our customers before, on, and after the visit. And that's constantly, in every facet of work that we do, it just keeps coming up. Like, how can we use technology? And minimal technology. We don't want too much technology, because you should remember that we run amusement parks. People are going upside down, stuff like that. They don't have their phones with them. So an app may not work. So then how do we know who's coming, and what has he done before? Who is this person? How likely is he go to the next ride? Will he enjoy the next ride? Can we direct him to something else which he will like? So these are the questions that we're trying to answer. And obviously technology is RFID and the latest tech. It's all these things are possible. I think the problem is cost. How to balance cost and customer experience. But I always say customer wins. So if you are able to delight your customer at 10 points instead of 5, I think, and then you go from there. So next time you make it 15 points. So I think it's always a continuous process of trying to improve his or her experience in your facility. So that's how we look at it. And we also follow the NPS system. And it's like a Bible for us. We look at the customer NPS scores. And with that, we know exactly what is going right and what is going wrong in each park, in each section, water park, this one, restaurants. So I think that's something that we, is something that we really hold close to us. Out of park, how to use our own data to reach the people at the right time with very efficient costs. I think that is again something that digital marketing has enabled for us. I think the cost of acquisition of a new customer acquisition, or the cost of reaching out to a customer after a complaint or some issue has come down drastically, and I think it's much more accurate now with social media. And also the other thing is in an amusement park there could be crisis and things like that. So how do you communicate to people? And so I think viral messages. How do you make sure that the right kind of messaging goes out? The messaging does not get distorted. So there are a lot of challenges when it comes to customer complaints. How do you address that? I think those are the areas where technology is playing a huge role for us, and we hope to do better as well.
So Arun, just a related point, and I will quickly cover this with you and Hemant both. If you look at amusement parks, again, in the last 1 or 2 years, the footfalls have declined, right? And in my prior life, I've done quite a few projects with Disney. This was like about a decade back. So great story there, 50, 60-year-old company, right? Diversified. I wanted to get your thoughts on how do you see diversification in this space, right? You've got a set of customers, you've got their data, you've got all the insights that you spoke about. But amusement is one revenue. Do you see diversification as a strategy in the business model?
I think so. We are in the business of creating lasting memories for people. So amusement park is the conduit for that, and we use that conduit for people to have lasting memories. Now there are other ways that people could have lasting memories. So I mean, I think the sky is the limit in terms of how you can diversify. But I think for Wonderla, at least, we believe that what we are doing is still unique, and it's still a nascent industry in India. Not too many good amusement parks which have survived the test of time, and there are hardly any chains of amusement parks in India. So I think our focus is to try and make sure that amusement parks are a worthwhile option for a lot of large cities in India. So
Sure.
we're still in that state. So I think before diversification, I think there is still primary work that we have to do. But having said that, I think people, like I said, everybody was talking here, I think people's attention spans are getting shorter, and people want more and more. Food is coming to your house. You want one toothbrush, it'll come to your house in 2 hours, right? Yeah. These things you could not imagine 5 years or 10 years back, right? You don't have to step out of your house for anything. So in that kind of a world, how do you make sure that people want to go out? But I think because human beings are social, they'll still want to go out and have memorable experiences. Technology can play a role, but I think genuine human interaction will still trump everything else. So at least our immediate future, next 5 years, is to try and expand our business. And then diversification, obviously, in allied thing will come later. That's
couldn't agree with you more on the point that you made, Arun, on the attention span is coming down. And I was just when I was listening to you, I was just playing this in my mind that if you look at the last 6-7 years, right, we were okay with a 5-minute video until 5-6 years back. Yeah. We were okay with a 3-minute video on social media until maybe 3 years back. Today, we find a 45-second video also too long. And if you really see the social media and all the digital marketing, I think most of the marketing videos are less than 30 seconds. It really amplifies the point that you were making. I do hope it doesn't get any shorter from here on, but we'll wait for time to validate that. Hemant, your quick take on how.
Yeah. On the tech part of it, I think it's a combination of tech being enabler as also the tech being the driver. See, we are in the business of happiness and experiences, right? and an amusement park can only do so much when it comes to giving you physical experience. But
Sure.
when you have to extend beyond the park and also bring in immersive experiences or technologies, today we have not even touched upon AR or VR or XR in any way. So I mean, I don't think it's always about the cost, like Arun mentioned. It's also about many companies in tech space also would be looking for collaboration. Today, amusement parks have very large investments in one or two locations. So maybe there is a need for collaboration to bring in better experiences for consumers at large, cutting edge technology with immersive experiences that can really build great emotional connect and nice memories. That's really the need of the hour. I think the very fact is amusement industry hasn't grown in so many years is also because there has been no change that has been brought about. And COVID has really taught us that building IPs or disrupting your own selves by doing something radical is what's really needed. Otherwise, to retain people, see, so the challenge in amusement park is three T's essentially: time for people to spend. It's a day experience or a minimum half day experience. It's never less than that. Second is to travel long distance. No amusement parks you will find in the catchment. You have to go away. I mean, 50, 60, 70 plus kilometers, right? And the third is the attention span or the tech that can hold people together. And therefore, when someone comes to your location, you have to make sure that they take loads of experiences which can also go beyond. So maybe there is a marriage required, and I don't think I have the right answers. It's a WIP for all of us, but we need to reinvent with technology, and maybe tech may play a much larger role than what we imagine today. So,
Sure.
yeah.
So, gentlemen, I think we completely out of time. The last 5 minutes, I'll quickly, get into a rapid fire. Like I had mentioned, this is the final point that we'll explore in our discussion today. I just want to get your thoughts in maybe a sentence at the max, or preferably a word. If you were to crystal gaze, and I'll probably change the sequence this time around, how would you describe your business model? You can take the next 5-year horizon or 2030 horizon. How do you see your business model innovating in the next 5 to 7 years? Your response in maybe a word. Let me start with you. Maybe PC Mustafa, let me come to you.
Fresh is the future. Fresh sells. Thereby, we should
Fresh,
find,
yeah.
we should find right ways to distribute fresh and manufacture fresh.
Arun, your sentence or a word.
I think human beings will always want to play and have fun. So I think I don't see that some aspects of it changing, but of course it's going to be a lot more virtual, a lot more instant, a lot more multi-sensory experiences. All your senses. It'll be an attack on your senses. I think that's all I can say.
As they say. Yeah. Thank you for that, Hemant.
Yeah, I think it's merging of two environments, physical and virtual, and try and make it digital in time to come.
Thank you, Sagar. Your thoughts and comments?
Like I said, people make good food. We continue making food good. And our industry is known for health, hygiene, happiness. So continue spreading that. And look at aspiring to be that food conglomerate coming out of India and going places.
I like that. Good food. Nitin, over to you.
With the kind of busier lifestyles that our consumers are going to be living with every passing month, every passing year, we believe a lot of consumption that has traditionally happened inside of homes will start to happen, maybe inside, maybe outside, but it will be assisted from outside the home. That's a clear behavior that we are seeing. And I think that's a behavior that will only continue to propel from this point on.
I'm sure, all the food entrepreneurs on the panel must be thinking, hopefully the Indian consumer becomes like the Japanese, where, the kitchens are getting smaller. And, I think the time that they spend, eating out is more. But thank you, gentlemen. This was really a great discussion with you. I picked up, maybe 3 important takeaways. A, And that registered in my mind that innovation cannot be too structured. And I think we all living in a world which is too structured. Companies are running a lot of structures and systems and processes. But I think the big message was to innovate. You'll probably not have to disregard structure, but you can't be too organized for innovation. That was one. Two, I think we spoke about innovation not just around packaging and product, but using technology as a key fulcrum for innovation. And last but not the least, I think innovation is everyone's responsibility in the organization, not necessarily an innovation cell that companies talk about. But with that, we'll call it a wrap. It was really great speaking to you, and thank you once again for your time today and sharing your important perspectives.
Thank you everyone for an engrossing discussion. With this, we have come to the end of the 2-day-long summit. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for the closing remarks.